I used to think I had a quiet life. Not boring, just stable. My name's Jack Reynolds. I work maintenance for the school district in a little town in Indiana. My wife, Claire, works at the public library. She's been there 7 years now, ever since we had our boy, Max. Max is 6. Bright kid. Loves dinosaurs and hates vegetables. He gets that from me, the dinosaurs anyway. Claire and I met at a high school reunion. I remember she was wearing this green dress that clung to her hips like it had been sewn on by someone who knew what they were doing. We hit it off fast. Too fast, probably, but I never saw a reason to slow down when something felt right. We got married after 8 months. Max came not long after. I wasn't planning on being a father that soon, but I was proud. I built him a crib by hand in the garage, every rail sanded smooth like I was trying to protect him from the world before he even saw it. For the first 5 years, I thought we were happy. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Friday nights meant grilled cheese and old black and white movies. Saturday mornings, Claire made pancakes with strawberries and whipped cream. She said it was Max's favorite, but sometimes I think she made them for me. Then she changed. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. She started coming home a little later, claiming there was cataloging to do, or some board meeting with the city council about budget cuts. I believed her. I mean, who lies about working late at the library? She started doing her makeup more carefully. Bought new bras. And not the practical ones like before, these had lace and bows and tags that looked like they belonged in a movie scene, not a marriage. I didn't question it out loud. I thought maybe she was trying to feel better about herself. But then came the stockings. She said they were for her confidence. That every woman deserved to feel beautiful. I agreed with that, but the white ones caught my eye the most. White thong. Garter belt. Stockings that reached her thighs like they were a secret invitation to a party I hadn't been invited to. And I wasn't. That became clear real fast. One evening I came home early from work because the principal at Jefferson Elementary had a water heater blow, and I finished the job ahead of schedule. Claire didn't expect me. She was in the mirror, snapping pictures of herself in one of those outfits, white lace panties and a tight cardigan that barely covered her chest. She didn't see me. I stood in the hall like a coward, watching her pose. Smile. Pout. Stick her tongue out and tilt her head. Then I heard the shutter of her phone camera. Over and over. Snap. 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 I backed away before she turned around. That night, I laid in bed next to her and stared at the ceiling, wondering who the hell she was sending those pictures to. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. I even convinced myself she was just trying to spice up our life. But it didn't feel like ours anymore. Not really. The next morning, Max spilled orange juice on the kitchen floor, and I knelt to clean it up. That's when I saw something tucked between the trash can and the wall, half covered by a grocery list. A notebook. Black leather. Gold embossing. Inside were role-playing scripts. Not just one, several. Detailed scenes. Librarian gets punished. Naughty housewife teaches a lesson. Caught between the stacks. I read the lines. She wasn't writing stories. She was preparing acts. Dialogue. Descriptions of what she wore, what she said. And sometimes, what he said back. The name at the top of some of the pages was Tyler. I had no idea who Tyler was. But I knew one thing, it wasn't me. I couldn't sleep that night. Not even with Claire breathing slow and even beside me. I kept seeing that notebook in my mind. Her handwriting. The way she described herself, tight white blouse, buttons straining, like she was proud of being watched, of being wanted. She'd never written anything like that for me. I dropped Max off at school the next morning, still thinking about it. He was excited about a new book his teacher promised to read in class. I smiled and nodded as he talked, but my mind was locked on Tyler. Who was he? Someone from the library? A regular? A coworker? Some younger guy with a gym membership and cologne that cost more than my truck's last oil change? I didn't ask her. Not directly. Not yet. Instead, I told Claire I'd picked up an extra shift fixing lights at the high school that evening. She didn't ask questions, just gave me a half smile and said she might be home late too. City reps visiting, she said. We have to show we're staying productive. She didn't even blink when she said it. That's what hurt the most. At 5:45, I parked across the street from the library and waited. I kept the engine off, windows cracked. It was a small building, old brick, big glass windows facing the front. The lights inside were still on, glowing that soft yellow the library always had. I'd brought Max there hundreds of times. Now it felt foreign. Off. At 6:12, I saw her. Claire came around the corner in heels, not the flats she always wore to work, and a knee-length coat. Her hair was done up, lips red like they hadn't been in months. She walked like she knew someone was watching. I watched. She walked inside. Didn't even look around. I waited another 10 minutes before I got out of my truck. Crossed the street slow. Quiet. My boots crunched gravel, but the rest of the night felt still. I crept around the side of the building, where the old office window faced the alley. Claire had told me before that it was hardly used, except for some archive overflow. That's when I saw them. The blinds were halfway down, but not shut all the way. Through the narrow slit, I saw Claire standing in the center of the room, coat off, blouse unbuttoned, her chest rising and falling like she was excited. Nervous. Alive. A young man stood in front of her. Early 20s, maybe. Tan, lean, smirking like he was watching his favorite show. His phone was out. He lifted it and started taking pictures. Claire turned around, arched her back, and slowly bent over the desk. Her white thong peeked out beneath her skirt. Stockings wrapped tight around her thighs. She reached behind herself, tugged the skirt higher. The guy didn't say a word, just kept taking pictures like he was documenting evidence for a fantasy. Then Claire turned around, dropped to her knees, and started unbuttoning his jeans. My mouth went dry. I stood there in the alley like a ghost, heart pounding in my ears. I didn't look away. I couldn't. It was like my body was frozen between denial and rage. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't a mistake. She was comfortable doing it. Enjoying it. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove. Just drove. Out past the fields where the windmills stood, turning slow in the dark. I sat on the hood of my truck, hands shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there thinking, what else don't I know? When I finally made it home around midnight, Claire was already asleep. I could still smell him on her, the cologne, the sweat, something sour beneath the fabric. I didn't say a word. The next day, I went to her parents' house. I told myself I just wanted to talk, to make sense of it. Her mother met me at the door with a tight smile and tired eyes. I was wondering when you'd figure it out, she said, like we were discussing a traffic ticket or a misplaced casserole. I stood there, stunned. Her dad came out from the kitchen, rubbing his jaw. She's always been like this, he muttered. Even in college. Needed someone touching her. Needed to feel wanted. You were just the first guy who stayed. I didn't know what hurt more, what they said, or how casually they said it. She likes being in a man's arms, her mother said, folding her arms like it was some old family flaw. She likes making love all night long. You should have known that before marrying her. Before I could answer, her mother added the last blow. You didn't really think Max was yours, did you? I left Claire's parents' house in a daze. The sun was up, but it felt like night. My ears rang with her mother's voice. You didn't really think Max was yours, did you? The kind of thing someone says when they've been sitting on a truth too long. Like they thought I didn't deserve to know. Or maybe they figured I'd never have the guts to ask. I went home. Max was sitting on the floor building a Lego dinosaur. He looked up at me with that innocent grin I'd always loved. Daddy. Look. T-Rex has a rocket launcher now. I smiled and nodded, but it felt like my body was a puppet. Cool, buddy. That's awesome. He wasn't mine. No. That couldn't be right. But then again, I thought Claire wasn't cheating either. That night, after Max went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. Claire came in an hour later, smelling like cheap soap and men's deodorant. She didn't kiss me. Just said, "Long day," and headed to the shower. I didn't follow. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching DNA kits. It felt dirty, like I was betraying him. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about him. It was about her. If Claire had lied to me about everything else, how could I trust she hadn't lied about this too? The next morning, I took Max to school like normal. Gave him a big hug and told him I loved him. He hugged me back and didn't even notice I held on a little longer than usual. A week later, the kit arrived in the mail. Claire didn't notice. She never checked the mail anymore. Too busy living her second life. It was simple, a swab from my mouth, and one from Max's. I waited until he fell asleep that night and carefully swabbed the inside of his cheek. He stirred but didn't wake. I sealed the samples, filled out the forms, and sent it back. Then I waited. Every day I came home from work wondering if she'd confess, wondering if I should scream or cry or pack a bag and leave. But I didn't. I played it cool. I still made dinner. Still folded the laundry. Still kissed her goodnight, even when I could barely stomach the smell of another man on her. 2 weeks later, the results came. Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at the screen for a long time. No blinking. No reaction. My hands were steady. Too steady. Like my body was in shock and hadn't caught up to the truth yet. Max wasn't mine. He never had been. But I raised him. I loved him. That wasn't fake. She was. That night, Claire wore another new outfit, black lace this time. She told me she was going to bed early. I nodded and stayed in the kitchen. At midnight, I heard her phone vibrate. It was on the counter. She always forgot to take it with her. I picked it up. No lock screen. No passcode. She must have thought I'd never look. There were dozens of messages. Pictures. Videos. Her in the library. In her car. At someone else's apartment. One clip was her moaning Tyler's name. Not mine. Never mine. My hand clenched around the phone until my knuckles cracked. That was the night I stopped being the soft man. I made a plan. I wasn't going to scream or throw things or leave. No. I was going to take everything from her. Quietly. Calmly. The way she took everything from me and smiled while doing it. Because people like Claire don't just break hearts. They keep pieces of you like trophies. And I was done letting her keep anything. Something shifted in me that night. It didn't happen loud. There was no yelling or smashing dishes or storming out the door. It was quiet. Like flipping a light switch in your head and realizing it had been off for years. I watched Claire sleep that night. She looked peaceful, almost childlike under the covers, her blonde hair fanned across my pillow like she hadn't spent the evening on her knees for someone else. I used to love that face. Now, I didn't feel a thing. The soft man she married, the one who brought her flowers and built her a porch swing, the one who worked overtime just to afford her birthday surprises, that man died the moment I read those DNA results. What took his place was sharper. I didn't want a messy confrontation. That would give her control again, let her cry and twist the story. She was good at that. Too good. Instead, I'd take my time. Break her slowly. Piece by piece. The first step was the finances. Claire didn't know the login to any of our bank accounts. She never paid a single bill. I handled everything: mortgage, savings, insurance, Max's school payments. She liked it that way. I logged in that morning before she woke up. Started separating money into accounts with new names. Quiet ones. I stopped the automatic transfers to her personal debit card. She wouldn't notice until it declined. Next, I checked the security cameras. I'd installed them years ago, one in the garage, one over the front porch, one tucked behind the living room TV. Claire thought they were just for break-ins. Turns out, they caught a lot more. Like Tyler slipping into our house last Thursday while I was at work. Claire told me she had a headache that day. Apparently the cure was 20 years old and wore gym shorts. I downloaded the footage. Saved it to a USB drive. I'd collect everything, every message, every video, every photo. Not to expose her to the world, no. That'd be too easy. I wanted her to know I saw it all. And that I still didn't say a word. Because that silence? It would eat her alive. 2 days later, her card declined at the grocery store. She called me while I was fixing a ceiling fan at the local diner. "Hey, Jack," she said, trying to sound casual. "Something's wrong with my card. It says declined. Can you check the bank?" I wiped my hands and kept my voice flat. "That's strange. Maybe the bank flagged it. You been buying anything weird?" There was a pause. I could hear her thinking. "No, just groceries and stuff." "I'll look into it," I said, and hung up. That night she didn't say anything. Just moved a little stiff around the kitchen, like a dog waiting for a scolding. She didn't get one. I wanted her to feel safe. For now. Because the next part of my plan needed patience. I set up a new email under a fake name and started messaging her from it. Just casual at first. Then suggestive. I used phrases I'd seen in her texts to Tyler. Things she liked to hear. I sent pictures I pulled off the internet, lean guys with just enough muscle, tattoos, tight jeans. She took the bait after 4 days. "You sound familiar," she messaged. "Do I know you?" "Maybe. I've seen you in the library." That got her attention. I could almost see the blush on her cheeks through the screen. She liked being watched. That much I knew. By the next week, we were sexting. She sent pictures. Ones I'd never seen her send me. On Friday, she suggested we meet after hours. She didn't know the man she was dirty texting from her work computer was the same one kissing her goodnight at home. I looked at the calendar. June 14th. Our wedding anniversary. Perfect. Let her plan her secret little meeting that night. Let her dress up and shave and spritz perfume for a stranger. I'd be watching from the shadows. Not because I wanted proof. Because I wanted to see the look on her face when she realized the trap she'd walked into. June 14th came like any other day. But it wasn't. It was our wedding anniversary, the day Claire promised me forever in front of everyone we loved. And now she was planning to celebrate by meeting a stranger in the back of her library after hours. She had no idea the stranger was me. At breakfast that morning, she didn't say a word about it being our anniversary. Not even a fake smile. I made her pancakes, her favorite, and she barely touched them. She was distracted, constantly checking her phone like a teenager with a crush. I guess she had one. Later that afternoon, I dropped Max off with my sister. Told her Claire and I had a date night. That part wasn't a lie, not exactly. The truth was just too ugly to say out loud. Claire left the house around 5 o'clock. She wore a long coat, but I knew what was under it. I'd seen her outfit the night before when she laid it out on the bed: white lace thong, matching stockings, and a silky red top that dipped too low in the front to be accidental. She packed perfume in her purse. A bottle I bought her for our first Christmas together. I followed her 10 minutes later. Parked in the alley behind the library where the dumpsters were. Nobody ever looked back there. I'd already unscrewed one of the old basement windows last week, just enough to let me slip inside if I needed to. But I didn't go in just yet. I watched through the side window, the same one where I'd once seen that young guy take pictures of her. That night had changed everything. And tonight was going to finish what that moment started. At exactly 6:45, she walked into the reading room. Her coat was gone. She looked like a character from one of those trashy romance novels: stockings, heels, legs crossed too high on the thigh. She waited, checking her phone. I waited too. Watched. At 6:50, I sent her a message from the fake email. "Don't move. I see you." She jumped a little, smiled, then typed back. Where are you?" I didn't answer. Instead, I slipped through the basement window. Quiet. Careful. I crept through the dim hallway, listening to my own breath and the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. The library was locked to the public by then. She had the keys. It was just her and me. And she didn't even know it. I moved through the shadows until I reached the reading room's storage closet. From there, I had a perfect view of her through the cracked door. She stood up. Twirled a little. Checking herself in the window's reflection. Then she started unbuttoning her top slowly, as if someone was already watching. She pulled out her phone. Took a picture of herself. Posed with one hand behind her head and the other resting on her hip, her thong peeking out beneath the red silk. Then came the text. "Don't keep me waiting, baby." I didn't reply. Instead, I took out the little wireless speaker I'd hidden earlier in the week behind the librarian's desk. Turned it on. Opened a voice recording I'd made earlier that morning. It was my voice, distorted just slightly. "Turn around," it said. She froze. Her body stiffened, eyes wide. Slowly, she looked over her shoulder. "Good girl," the voice said again. "Now kneel." She obeyed. Still smiling. Still thinking this was a game. But the look in her eyes, it was different now. A little nervous. Like her instincts were starting to catch up. Like maybe this wasn't Tyler or Josh or whatever other name she'd been whispering lately. Then the voice played one last line. "Happy anniversary, Claire." She blinked. Sat up a little straighter. "Jack," she whispered, looking around. I stepped out of the shadows. Her face turned white. She tried to stand, to cover herself, but it was too late for dignity. She was already exposed, inside and out. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I held up the USB drive in my hand and simply said, "It's all here. Every message. Every video. Every dirty little secret you thought I'd never find." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I walked toward her slowly, set the drive down on the desk. "And this," I said, "is how our story ends." Then I turned and walked away. Let her sit there. Let her feel small in the place she thought made her powerful. Because I wasn't finished yet. I had one more piece to play. And it would ruin her completely. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I sat in my truck, parked 2 blocks from the library, and watched the front doors from a distance. I don't know why. I wasn't waiting for her to come running after me. Claire didn't run unless there was something in it for her. Still, I waited. Around 8:15, the lights inside the library turned off. 5 minutes later, she stepped out into the night air, wrapped tight in her coat again like the fabric could hide the shame under her skin. She looked over her shoulder once before locking the door behind her. But she wasn't looking for me. She was looking for the man she thought she'd invited, the mystery. The thrill. The fantasy she built on a lie. And all she got was me. She stood there for a moment under the street lamp, frozen in place like she didn't know whether to cry or laugh or scream. Her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her phone. She tried calling me twice. I let it ring. Then I shut my phone off and drove away. The next morning, she was home before I was. She didn't say anything. She just sat on the edge of the bed like someone waiting for a sentence they knew they deserved. Max was still at my sister's. That silence in the house, it felt like fresh paint over moldy walls. Clean, but rotting underneath. Claire finally spoke. Jack. I raised a hand. Don't. There's nothing left to explain. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring like it might turn back time if she rubbed it hard enough. I'm sorry. Are you? I asked, calm. Or are you just caught? She didn't answer. I picked up the manila envelope from my desk and dropped it in her lap. Inside was a copy of the USB. The photos. The screenshots. Her messages. The security footage of Tyler walking through our front door while Max played in the backyard. And the results of the paternity test. I'm giving you a choice, I said. You walk away from this quietly. You sign the divorce papers without a word. You leave this house, you leave my name, and you leave Max with me. She flinched. But. I cut her off. You want me to go public? You want people to see what kind of mother flashes herself to college kids and sleeps with strangers in a library? Go ahead. Fight me. Her mouth closed. I leaned forward, quiet and cold. I've been soft for too long. You took advantage of that. You took advantage of me. She finally looked me in the eye. And for the first time since all of this began, she looked afraid. Good. I'm giving you one chance, I said. Make the right call. Or I'll make sure every parent at Max's school knows who you are. Every friend you've lied to. Every guy you've flirted with online. All of it. You won't just lose your job. You'll lose everything. I left the room. She stayed there, staring at that envelope like it held a bomb. It did. Over the next 2 days, she barely spoke. She walked around the house like a ghost. No more perfume. No more low-cut tops. No more white thongs. She was unraveling. And I hadn't even done my worst yet. I called her boss anonymously. Told him to check the library cameras for the night of June 14th, told him he might want to talk to Claire before the board did. I knew he would. He had a daughter at Max's school. By the next morning, Claire was suspended pending an investigation. That night, she finally broke. I'll sign the papers, she whispered from the doorway while I was watching TV. I'll leave. And Max? I asked. She hesitated. He's not yours. I nodded. You'll still leave him with me. You're in no shape to raise him. And you know it. She didn't fight. She packed the next day. A single suitcase. No tears. No begging. Just silence. When she got into the Uber and drove off, I didn't wave. I just watched. And that night, I slept like I hadn't slept in months. But something still lingered. Because now I had a question I couldn't let go of. If Max wasn't mine, whose son was he? After Claire left, the house was too quiet. Even with Max back home, playing with his Legos on the carpet or asking me to help him build another dinosaur, the silence hung around like stale air. I'd look at him and feel split. He was still the same little boy who crawled into my lap at night, who called me daddy without hesitation. He didn't know a thing had changed. But something had. And it wasn't just Claire leaving. I couldn't shake what she said, "He's not yours." It played over and over in my head like a song stuck on loop. So one night, after Max fell asleep, I pulled out the second DNA test I had ordered, this one a full ancestry breakdown. I mailed it off in a plain white envelope, no name attached. Just a barcode. I wasn't looking for who he was. I was looking for who he wasn't. 2 weeks later, I got the results. I stared at the screen, blinking. The results said 0% shared DNA with Claire. 0. I read it again. I wasn't Max's father. But neither was Claire his mother. At first, I thought there had been a mistake. Maybe the sample was contaminated. Maybe I'd grabbed someone else's toothbrush. But I double-checked everything. The results were clear. Max was not biologically related to either of us. The panic set in like cold water dumped over my head. Who was this boy? I sat on the porch for hours, the wind cutting through my shirt, thinking back to everything, his birth, the hospital stay, how weirdly quick everything had been, how Claire always insisted we go to that private birthing center 2 towns over, the one her old friend worked at. I called the center. Disconnected line. I searched online. Closed 2 years ago. No forwarding contacts. No trace of medical records. I called Claire. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. Then another. Finally, she picked up on the 3rd day. "What?" she snapped, her voice raw, like she'd been crying for hours or drinking for days. "Who is Max?" Silence. "I know he's not mine," I said. "But he's not yours either. I did the test. Don't bother denying it." She didn't speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was small. "You were never supposed to find out." "Find out what, Claire?" She sighed. "There was a couple. They were addicts. The girl, she was young. 6 months pregnant. They came to the center looking for help, trying to trade the baby for clean records and $5,000. My friend, Melissa, she handled it. The paperwork was buried. I just wanted a baby." "You stole a child," I said, standing now, my heart pounding. "You brought a stranger's child into our home and passed him off as ours." "I loved him," she snapped. "I raised him. We both did. You think he'd be better off with them? They'd be dead in a gutter by now. He's ours." "No," I said. "He's someone's." She hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched Max, curled up on the couch with his toy truck, and I realized something: none of this was his fault. He didn't ask for this. He didn't ask to be part of some twisted lie or cover-up. He was just a boy. My boy. I'd raised him since he took his first breath. But now I had a choice to make. Do I pretend I never found out? Or do I find out who he really is? The next morning, I woke up with one thought in my head: I have to know where he came from. I had already pulled all of Claire's old emails, her messages to Melissa, the nurse who worked at that closed birthing center. Most of them were gone. Deleted, wiped, or never sent from her main account. But there were traces, little digital footprints, metadata in drafts, autosaved fragments in an old backup I found buried in her laptop. There was one name. Angela Whitaker. Age 19 at the time Max was born. No fixed address. History of minor arrests, shoplifting, possession, disorderly conduct. The child was listed in one message as a white male, approximately 7 pounds at birth. Transferred to new custodians as arranged. No formal adoption filed. My blood ran cold. They hadn't adopted Max. They had trafficked him. I stared at his baby pictures again. At that tiny face I'd fallen in love with. The first time he opened his eyes, the way he'd held my finger so tight, like he already knew I was his father. And I was. No DNA test could undo that. But it didn't change the truth either. I started digging for Angela Whitaker. Social media gave me nothing. But a few newspaper crime reports from 8 years ago mentioned a boyfriend, Corey Denton. Same background. Worse rap sheet. 3 years in county for meth distribution. His mugshot was burned into my memory now. Hollow eyes. A mean mouth. Scars along one cheek. I couldn't stop picturing Max's eyes and wondering, do they belong to him? I needed answers. So I did something desperate. I called a private investigator. I told him I needed to find Angela. Alive or dead. Within 4 days, he called me back. She's in Kansas City, he said. In a shelter. Name changed to Annie White. She's clean now. In therapy. No current record. Corey's out of the picture. I felt my breath catch. Does she know where the boy is? The line was quiet. She's been looking for him. That hit me like a brick. I went for a drive, trying to calm the war inside me. I thought of Claire, how she'd built our entire life on a lie. I thought about how I'd been a pawn in her game. But most of all, I thought about Max. What would this do to him? And then, as if fate hadn't finished twisting the knife, I got a knock at my door the next night. A woman stood there, frail, pale, with faded brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her eyes were red from crying. She looked no older than 30, but there was a heaviness in her face that came from years of pain. "Mr. Carter?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm Annie," she said. "Angela. I think you're raising my son." Angela, Annie, stood on my porch, trembling like a leaf in a storm. I didn't speak. Neither did she. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. I could see it now, up close, Max's eyes were her eyes. Same shape. Same color. But softer. More innocent. The guilt in her face wasn't fake. She wasn't here for revenge or headlines. She was a woman haunted by what she'd lost. "I'm not here to take him," she finally said, voice cracking. I just wanted to see him. Once. To know he's alive. That he's okay." My throat tightened. "He's not just okay. He's loved." Tears streamed down her face. We sat on the porch in silence for an hour. I told her about his favorite cartoons. His fear of thunder. How he sleeps with one sock on and how he calls peanut butter peanut batter. I didn't tell her that part of me had hated her for existing. Until now. "Why'd you do it?" I asked softly. She took a shaky breath. "I was scared. Broke. Hi. Corey said we'd sell the baby and get clean. But when I came to my senses, he was already gone. They told me he died. That the baby died during transport." She looked at me, sobbing. I never stopped looking. I got clean. Changed everything. "You're not the only one Claire lied to," I muttered. "I know, she whispered. I know what she did to you. I know about the pictures. The cheating. The role-play games. I saw everything. I stared at her. What do you mean? She reached into her worn-out purse and pulled out a flash drive. I didn't just find you through a PI. I was already tracking Claire. Watching her for months. I needed to know who had my son. Anne. I saw what she did to you. How she paraded around in those stockings. How she let those college boys treat her like furniture. I even saw the night she brought one home while you were working the graveyard shift. You filmed it? I saved it, she said, setting the flash drive down next to me. Because I knew one day, you'd need to see the truth. She stood up, gently brushing off her jeans. I'm not going to take Max away from you. You're his father in every way that matters. But Claire? She doesn't deserve either of you. She walked off into the night, disappearing down the sidewalk like a ghost. I didn't move for hours. That night, I plugged in the flash drive. She wasn't lying. There was everything: Claire in her white thong, posing in the library's private reading room for some frat boy barely old enough to drink. Her journal entries. Emails to lovers. Messages about how I was too soft, how I'd never be enough, how she wanted to be used by strangers. But the real surprise wasn't what I found about her. It was what I found about me. There was a document on that drive. Scanned. Old. Dated 8 years ago. Adoption papers. Signed by Claire Carter and Jack Carter. Only, I had never signed them. The signature was forged. Claire had stolen Max, but she'd tried to cover it. Poorly. The adoption was invalid. And she knew it. But to keep the lie going, she forged my name and sealed it under her maiden name. The next morning, I went to the family court. With a lawyer. By the end of the week, Claire was summoned for fraud, custody manipulation, and unlawful adoption. Her cheating, the fake papers, the lies, they were all laid bare in court. Max stayed with me. Claire lost all parental rights. She screamed at the judge. Said I was weak. A coward. A soft man who didn't deserve her fire. But I didn't flinch. Because that soft man had now outplayed her. The court asked if I wanted to pursue child support, restitution, damages. I declined. I already have what matters, I said, pulling Max onto my lap. As for Angela, she left town quietly. No drama. No lawsuits. She wrote Max a letter and asked me to give it to him when he turned 18. I keep it in a safe. Max still calls me Dad. Not because of DNA or paper or courtrooms. But because I chose him. Every single day. And he chose me right back.